Let's get started here with email management. Um, First of all, I think a lot of people find this topic interesting because we've all just over the last 10 years or so, we went from never really dealing with email to now it becoming a part of our daily lives. If you tell somebody that you don't use email nowadays, they'll look at you in a weird way. So, and also we never really learned how to manage it. This technology was just kind of thrust upon us, and now we've got to manage it. And sometimes we get a ton of email, and actually the big problem, and I've had this happen to me, and I'm sure it's happened to some of you. Sometimes you get so many emails, and some of these are subscriptions that you subscribe to, newsletters, all this stuff. Some of it's spam, and then there's that one really important email that you need to respond to, but you kind of overlook it because you've just got way too much in your inbox. Today we're going to talk about a number of tips and ideas, and I want you to come away from this webinar with these tips and ideas. I'm not trying to tell anybody in this webinar exactly how they should manage their email. I simply want to provide a lot of tips for you. And some of these I think are going to resonate really well with you, and you're going to find that, hey, if I use this, this will help me be more productive in my day. This will help me be less anxious about my email. Actually, I've had that feeling before where I'm almost scared to look at my inbox because in the past I've had it stack up to where there's 100, 200, up to 1,000 emails in my inbox. And sometimes some of them have been read, some of them haven't, some of them need to be replied to, and I didn't. And we're going to talk about how do we get a better grip on our email. And actually, what I'll do in this particular webinar, this will be interesting. I will actually do a live demonstration of me answering my email. So because I knew I was going to be doing the webinar today, I purposely did not check my email in the morning. I usually check it a couple times a day. Didn't check it in the morning, and I just kind of let it stack up. And you'll get a chance to see how many emails do I have and how do I clear out the inbox. And I promise you that I will clear out my inbox in a very short period of time while I've got you here. Nobody wants to see me go through my emails and spend a ton of time here on this webinar. I guarantee you that. So let's go ahead and get started with our first kind of tip here. Tip number one is focusing on the task at hand. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people will try to multitask. They'll have their email open in one window, they'll be working on a project in another window, maybe writing a report or something like that. And what happens is a lot of people will get to the point where they're losing focus because they're doing so many different things. They're losing focus. So it's a good idea if you're checking your email to make sure that when you're inside of your email, you're trying to process your email. And here's what I mean by process. Process means organizing it, filtering it, and just responding and getting rid of it. You want your inbox. How nice would it be? A lot of you in here, how nice would it be if you had your inbox at 0 today? A lot of people don't have it. So we're going to talk about how can we get some of our emails out of the way. And actually, I think if you can implement the tips that we talk about today, before the day is up, you can get your inbox to 0. And we'll actually show you, we're going to talk about how to go about doing this. And that's the main thing. I want you to try and implement this. So tip number one is focus. Make sure that you're focusing on, here's what I got to do. I got to get through my email. I don't want to be stuck in this window all day. And let's do it. So let's talk about our another thing here, turning off email notifications. This is a big problem, I think, because technology has allowed us to have these email notifications, and that's great because we can find out when an email hits right away. So we get the notification on our phone, maybe. Or maybe you get it on your, maybe it's an Android. If you see this one right here, this is like the top navigation bar of an Android phone. If you've got an iPhone, you might have something like that, or an iPad, the little number that shows up. Or if you're using Outlook, you see this one down here, this little email notification. I would turn those off because they're distractions. And I don't know how many of you still have an email address, but or you've seen this. If you have an email address, it's time to upgrade. So turn off those email notifications. Now, tip number 3 is start with the easiest ones first. So anything that takes less than a minute, you should just respond to it right away. And also, we all know that we have a lot of emails that come in that are what I would call reference or notification emails. Those kind of emails, you want to basically archive them or delete them right away. So this is what I mean by start with the easiest ones first. And also, this creates some momentum for you because if I start off with a really, really tough email that's going to take me a few minutes to respond to, and it's dealing with a project and I got to think about it, if I can just handle it by getting through the quick ones first, now I've got some momentum. I'm actually more motivated to get through those other emails and not just say, well, I'll reply to that one later. So start with the easiest ones first. You'll see it giving you some momentum. Anything that's like a quick reply, and by quick reply I mean less than 1 minute, you need to take care of that right away. Let's talk about tip number 4, sending less email. Now, believe it or not every single email needs to be replied to. So let's say you send a request to someone and you're like, hey, did you get that project done? And they reply, yep, it's all done. It's on your desk. Okay. And then you respond, thank you. And the person responds, you're welcome. This isn't a chat. It's, a lot of times you get an email. If it's the end of the conversation, you don't need to add any pointless conversation on top of that. So I always tell people send less email. And actually, here's another thing. If you work, in an office, sometimes it's just useful to get up away from the screen and just talk to somebody. Some things can be handled faster just talking about it than emailing about it. When we're doing email, we got to think about what are we going to say, what are we going to write, how are we going to write it. There's plenty of things, and sometimes these people are within yelling distance of where you are. Maybe you don't want to be yelling in your office, but getting up, and actually this is also another thing. We don't want to be sitting at our desk the entire day in front of a screen. Human beings were not meant to sit at desks in cubicles staring at computer screens. So if you have a job where you've got to be, where you're seated a lot, it's good to get up every so often. And I would try to use, rather than responding to every single email, some emails you can just archive them, walk over, and answer the email in person. So the less email you send, the less replies you're going to get back. And one of the big things we can do with email management is we want to avoid getting too much email. Even if it's just quick email that we can delete, all of that takes up time because we got to look at the email, figure out what needs to be done with it, and then we got to archive it. And if you've got 100 emails like that, that's just way too much. And this, make sure that when you're also writing back to people, you keep it very concise. You are not writing great literature here, and I don't mean like include spelling mistakes. I mean, you're not writing giant prose where you need to be eloquent and 5 paragraphs. Keep it concise, and it saves everybody time. Tip number 5, don't get addicted to email. Now, what I mean by that is, and I've dealt with this, so I know what email addiction is like, and I think some of you know what it's like too. You might even be afraid to admit it, but a lot of people are addicted to email. A lot of people. What happens is we check our email, and it gives us a sense of, if you get an email, when you first got your email, I remember I had an AOL account, and when I would log into AOL with my dial-up, I'd hear that magical voice, you got mail. And I would be like, oh my gosh, somebody sent me some mail. Amazing. Now, I was a kid, and it was just like if you got postal mail, you'd be excited about it. Now we're not too crazy about it. Same thing with email. Now, as you start getting more acclimated to email, you stop, you're not as excited about it. But we've kind of gotten so used to checking our email that some people have gotten addicted to it because when they see an email that's directed to them, they get a little bit of maybe satisfaction that someone's maybe talking to them. And keep in mind another thing is sometimes we check our email and it's just, most of the time we've got emails that are not urgent. No reason to check your email. Now, I will give a little caveat for this. Let's say you got to make sure that emails are answered as quickly as possible. In that situation, well, that's your job, and I understand that you have to do it all the time. Most people are not working for customer service. Okay.
Paul, I think we're losing your audio. I was able to hear you, but I can see that other people are having a little bit of trouble.
Yes, in the chat box. All right, good point. Someone said you might want to lean in. Sorry if my microphone is not getting the strong signal here. Let me see if I can jack. Oh, I see what happened here. The program made it. How about this? How's this? Everyone should hear me better now, I hope. Give me a yes in the chat panel. All right.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And while we're on the topic of email addiction, I just wanted to mention something. There was an article that I read years ago on Huffington Post by a researcher. Her name is Linda Stone, and Linda Stone discovered something called email apnea. Are you familiar with apnea as a disease? Right? Is that when people are holding their breath while they're asleep, and they can actually die while they're asleep. So what she noticed as a researcher, that we tend to hold our breath in 80% of cases when we're checking our email. And if people are checking their email 75 times per hour, which happens sometimes if you're an office worker, and if everyone in the office is CC'd and BCC'd and everything, you have a ton of email you need to check. So you're actually holding your breath, because email creates this kind of anxiety and sense of urgency, which is not good for you. So if you're addicted to email, make sure you keep breathing while you're checking your email.
That's another reason to try to get through it faster, especially if you're holding your breath, right? So make sure that you do not get addicted to your email. Let's go over tip number 6. Create a Backburner folder. Or if you're using Gmail, this is going to be like a label. A folder or label called Backburner. Here's what I mean. Now, you could use any name that you want. I call it my Backburner folder. And here's what I used this when I really started getting serious about, I've got to get a grip on my email, because this is just information overload. It's getting really messy. I got to get organized. And I had at one point, you guys are going to think this is crazy, I had at one point over 2,000 emails in my inbox. Now, all of them at some point were looked at, and my big fear was I had a lot of, there may have been some emails out of those 2,000 that were not, that just weren't replied to. And sometimes I put them off. I said, okay, I delayed it, and I said, I'll check these later, and I'll reply to this later, and I never got to them. And I ended up having all these emails and just overloaded. So what I did was eventually, one day when I was trying to get, this created a bunch of anxiety for me. I used to hate checking my email. I used to be scared of checking my email. And what I did one day was I took all of those emails and I dumped them into a Backburner folder. Actually, I was using Gmail, so it was a label. So a label called Backburner. Now, to me, that means here are a bunch of emails that you didn't stay on top of, and some of them are from months ago. You're going to put all this information aside, and you're going to clean up your inbox right now. If you haven't gotten back to them over the last 2 months, you're probably not going to get back to them today or tomorrow or even this week. So to me, this was a quick way to starting fresh. And I can't tell you how nice it feels. If you have, try this today, if you have just a ridiculous amount of emails in your inbox, try creating a little Backburner folder and put it all in there. And then what's going to happen automatically is the moment you have a clean inbox, or maybe you put everything in the Backburner folder except today's emails. That's one of the things I did at that point. And it, one, got rid of all this anxiety, and two, I started wanting to make sure that that never happened again. So once I saw how empty and clean it looked, I started making sure that it stayed that way. So this is a good tip if you're way behind in, not way behind, I mean, if you've got an inbox that just has tons and tons of messages and it's overwhelming, create that Backburner folder. The inbox, in my opinion, should always be at 0 or very, very close to 0. Once it gets above 25, I think it's starting to get out of hand. Let's talk about tip number 7. Be honest with yourself. If you're not going to answer that email, just delete it or archive it. Nice thing about Gmail, Gmail has an archive functionality where if you archive it, you can still search for it and find it later. Google's really good with search, so it's very easy to find an email by just typing in a name or a keyword from the subject line or the text. Deleting it, if you feel like it could be deleted forever or needs to be deleted forever, then that's up to you. But if you've got emails that don't require a response, or you just know that you're never going to get to them, it's time to just archive that stuff. So let's talk about tip number 8. Don't mindlessly check your email. What I mean by that is some people get online and the first thing they do is just by automation, they just open up a browser and they, let's say, check their Gmail. And they're checking to see, hey, do I have an email? And then, 10 minutes later, they're just checking it again and they don't see anything. And then they check it again, they don't see anything. Then they finally see something. Oh, well, this is just some marketing communication. This is mindlessly checking email. You're checking email because you're hoping that something comes through. And it's basically like we're looking for ways to be busy. And email can be a distracting tool. And this is how some people have gotten to the habit of just mindlessly checking the internet. Just like some people will mindlessly browse the internet, some people will check their email just mindlessly, just checking, maybe organizing. Sometimes people will have tons of emails and they just constantly organize, but they never, process, reply, get these emails done.
I'm not a big gambler, but it kind of reminds me of a slot machine. Every time you check your email, like, is there anything new? Anything new? Oh, anyone? Anybody? Anything? What about me? Like, did Paul send me an email? So every time you get into the email, like, is anything new? No news?
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like Facebook.
I had that problem, I remember a year ago, just checking Facebook 7 times a day. We had a question come in from, I believe that's Chris. Will the recordings of these web sessions be available to view later? Yes, they will. So we will be posting these. Those of you that are in the webinar today, you'll get within 24 hours an email link to the recording. Tip number 9, checking email too often makes you procrastinate on the most important task. So we were just talking about mindlessly checking your email. What about working on that task that we've been procrastinating on? Or that big project? A lot of times we don't do these big projects or these tough tasks because we find excuses for not doing them. Oh, I had so many emails I had to check. Or you're checking your email as a way to make it, you're making yourself feel busy even though you're not busy with the right things. It's very easy to be busy nowadays. I mean, you could just read the news all day if you want. You could live in your inbox. You could live on Facebook. Actually, you could just watch YouTube videos all the day. But how do we tackle those most important tasks that we need to get done? Maybe you're a student and you really need to get started on that paper, or you got to start reading those chapters you're behind on. Or maybe, you've got to work on a certain project that needs to be done, by next week, and you're one of those people that tends to procrastinate. If you stop checking your email very often, you'll start getting these other tasks done. So make sure that you're aware of this, because a lot of people will live in their inbox, and it's usually a way to procrastinate on things. I know I've been guilty of this, and I'm sure other people have done this as well. Tip number 10, set a limit on how much time you spend in your inbox. So I'll give you an example. Anytime I open up my inbox, I try to make sure I'm never in there for more than 15 minutes. Sometimes it's just a quick 5 minutes. And sometimes if I'm really busy, I'll actually have a timer on the side, and I'm watching to make sure I don't spend more than 15 minutes in my email. By the way, I do the same thing with, to make sure I'm not on Facebook for too long, because it's very easy to just get caught up, and all of a sudden an hour goes by, 2 hours go by. Keep it, set yourself a limit, and by the way, deadlines make you more productive. Okay, I'll give you an example. We've all had this situation in the past where we had to write a paper, and it was due weeks from now. I remember I had this paper that I had to write when I was in college, and it was due at 12 midnight. It was a Sunday night that it had to be done at 12 midnight, and it had to be emailed to the professor. Now, going into that weekend on Friday, I knew I had to do this paper. I knew what I wanted to write about, but I just hadn't started it yet. And I figured, you know what, I'll get it done on Saturday. Saturday comes, kind of forgot about it. Sunday came along, and I didn't remember that I had to do this paper until 9:30 at night. All of a sudden, I remembered, I've got 2.5 hours to finish this paper. I got to get going. What happened? Because I had a deadline of 2.5 hours, all of a sudden, magically, this paper got done. How did it get done? Think about what happens when you only have a firm deadline, 2.5 hours, to get 8 pages done. All of a sudden, you focus like crazy. And now, by the way, this is not a reason to, I'm not advocating that you procrastinate on things, but I'm advocating setting up some kind of a deadline and making sure that it's a firm deadline, because then you can say, all right, this is what I'm setting aside for email checking, get it done. This paper that I wrote in 2.5 hours, it was actually a pretty good paper. And it was pretty good because I focused on it. And you can get your emails done a lot faster when you just focus on one thing, focusing on the task at hand, and setting up a time limit for deadlines. By the way, this time limit thing, having a deadline extends to other things as well. When we do our speed reading classes, we actually have one type of drill that we sometimes use that is a deadline drill. And that deadline drill has to do with trying to read a page in 1 minute. So let's say you had 400 words on a page, and you're trying to get through it in 1 minute, and you're constantly checking to see if you get through it, and that's a good way to improve your productivity. And that's actually a good way for some people to start learning to read faster. Now let's talk about our next tip. Tip number 11. You want to set a designated time for when you check your emails. If you can get into a routine of doing this, this can be very helpful. Now, I'm going to give you some ideas, and I'll give you an idea of what I do. What I try to do is not check my email first thing in the morning. When I get to the office, or if I'm working from home, I make sure that the first thing I do is, what is the most important thing that I want to get done today? Or what is the thing that I've been procrastinating on? Before I check my email, this is what I do. Now, I actually did an experiment last week, and you might want to try this one day yourself. Last week, I had a day where I did not check my email until 4 p.m. Now, for some people, this would feel like it's an impossible task. I didn't check my email till 4 p.m., and it was one of my most productive days ever because I didn't check my email. And I think that had a lot to do with why I was so productive. I got through these projects that were so important to me. There were like 4 big ones, and I actually got through them faster than I thought I would. And if I think about how I would have handled that in the past, like a couple of years ago, before I started implementing these email management techniques, I would work on the project, and then after about 20 minutes, I'd get a little tired or lose focus, and I'd be like, let me check my email real quick. And then I'd have some emails in there, and then something would distract me away from the project. Finally, I get back to the project, I work on it a little more, and then I say, you know what, I got to check my email again. Let me see if Bob got back to me. Okay, well, Bob's going to get back to you. Things are going to pop up. You're going to have distractions, and you've got to limit these distractions. And to me, setting aside a designated time to check email is a great way to get some real projects and important tasks done. What I try to do is wait until I finish my most important task of the day. And maybe I won't check my email till like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll check it again towards the end of the day, maybe like 4 o'clock, to make sure that maybe I got to get back to somebody before they leave from work. So I try to keep it to 2 per day. You can do what works for you, but I wouldn't be I used to check my email like 20 times a day, or maybe even more. But think about it. If you count, what about getting email on your phone? If you're getting email on your phone, you might be checking your email even more. And this is what we talked about earlier, turning off those notifications. When I first got a smartphone, it was an Android phone, and it was the first Google G1 phone. I was so excited about it because I'm like, now I can be the most productive person in the world. I can check my email and get back to people as soon as they shoot me emails. And I set up the Gmail on my phone, and it was checking constantly. And every time I had an email, it was just a little notification. It was a little buzz in my pocket. And I would check to see who got back to me. Oh, well, it's just a newsletter. Okay. And then I put it back in my pocket, and I'd be doing something else. And then I get another buzz, and I immediately check it. Oh. Finally, I got an important message that I needed to reply to, but I was at the airport and didn't really have time to type back to the person. So I just said, okay, you know what, I'll do that later. And what happens is later never comes. There's this really good quote. I wish I could remember where it's from, but the road to tomorrow leads to nowhere. And this has to do with procrastinating. I mean, if you push everything to tomorrow or I'll do it later, a lot of times later never comes. So what I try to do with those emails, eventually I got so fed up. And by the way, this was killing my battery. A lot of you that have smartphones, you know about horrible battery life. If you got a nice Android phone or an iPhone, that battery life is getting sucked up. Think about how much battery life is getting killed when you're constantly checking email. You're putting on the screen. Also, even when you don't have the screen on, your phone is checking for emails. That's draining the battery. And it's making you ultimately less productive. So I would set aside designated times. If you guys really want to be productive with your email, try turning it off. I understand for some of you, maybe you're doing work where you can't do this, but I think for most of you, this is something that's a realistic possibility. Set a designated time for when you're going to be checking those emails. Let's talk about
especially for people who are using Microsoft Outlook or Apple Mail. They have the functionality of shutting off the automatic download. An automatic download is that messages appear in your inbox as they're sent to you. This functionality is not available in Gmail, unfortunately. But if you're an Outlook user or an Apple Mail user, you can shut off your download. So the automatic downloading of your email messages will allows you to get messages as soon as they're received. But then if you allocate a specific time, let's say it's 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock, you only download them at 11 or 3. You allow the new messages to come in at a certain time.
A Gmail account.
It's a cool functionality.
Or if you've got Outlook, the way that you stop downloads from happening, don't have the browser window open in your Gmail. Just don't be in that window. A lot of people will keep their email window open for their entire day, or they'll keep Outlook open all day so they can just quickly check it. I'd recommend just turning those things off. And actually, if you really want to go, if you really want to try this out, here's a challenge I have for you. Try spending the first hour of your day working. Let's say you have projects that don't have to be done on the computer, or they have to be done on the computer, but they don't require an internet connection. Try spending an hour in the morning without an internet connection and get some stuff done that doesn't require internet. I think you'll find yourself being a lot more productive because you don't have that email notification. You don't have that urge. So again, these are ideas that I'm throwing out there that I want you guys to try out. These are all things that I've tried out, and I found them to be very, very productive ways to keep track of email. Now, tip number 12 is to have a reply by a certain day folder. This is actually a screenshot from my Gmail, and I actually have a reply by, and you see there's a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I actually have this. If you're a Gmail user, the way that I do this is through nested labels. So you can go to Settings in your Gmail, click on the Labels tab, and then add a new label. Call that label Reply By, and then you add another label called let's say number 1, Monday, and you would nest that label underneath Reply By. So it's like a subcategory. Anyway, so this shows up on the left side of my email inbox, and this is a good way for me to basically, you know how we have sometimes you get an email and you can't answer it right away, but you don't want to leave it in your inbox either. What I do is I put it in this label. And by the way, if you're not using Gmail, you can just create, most email programs have like a folder creation functionality, or maybe it's a tagging functionality. You can do this, and what I do is I say, okay, let's say, okay, today is Monday. If I got an email today that I can't answer today, but I really need to answer it by Tuesday, I'll throw it into the Tuesday label. And then on Tuesday, I make sure that there are no emails in my Tuesday folder, because those all need to be replied to. Now, let's say I look in my Tuesday folder and I see this email, you know, I haven't replied to it and I still can't reply to it now. And you know what? It could probably wait until tomorrow. Then I'll throw it into the Wednesday folder. Okay. But by having this, you know, these 7 days, I can always keep track of time-sensitive emails. Okay. That's tip number 12. Have some kind of a reply by a certain day folder. Tip number 13 is that you need to realize that you don't need to reply to every single email. Sometimes you've got emails from, let's say, people that are working with you, and they're just giving you a heads up, like an FYI. They're saying, hey, by the way, this project is done. You don't always have to say, oh, well, thank you, or just, okay. Some people, I'll get sometimes emails from people that the reply is just okay. I know the reply is okay because you probably saw my email. It's not necessary to reply, and you know, it's just taking up, you know, little bits of time here and there. Don't think that you have to reply to every single one of these emails. Now, tip number 14 is to create a canned response. Canned responses are quick ways, canned responses or templates. You know, let's say you are, let's say you have a certain kind of response. Let's say you work in customer service or marketing or some other, or maybe sales, and you've got a certain kind of an email that you always send out. Maybe you customize it a little bit, but you always basically say the same thing, and you're always typing this out. Now, it helps if you're a fast typer, and yeah, that might not take you a while, but count up all that time, it starts adding up. Creating a template or canned response. In Gmail, let me show you how you can do this in Gmail. I'm going to share my screen, and you guys let me know. Are you able to see my screen right now? Okay, so if you want to,
I'm able to see your screen.
Create a canned response in Gmail, let me show you. I'm going to move my any meeting from here, and you can simply go to the area right here. Pulls up my chat. Hit settings, In Gmail, the canned responses are in labs. You have to go to labs and then just search for the word canned, and you'll see at the top here, right here, canned responses. Okay, and you can see email for the truly lazy. Save and send your common messages using the button next to the compose form. Okay, so what I can do now is I can enable this, and then I save my changes. And now when I get into my compose area, you'll notice an area right here called canned responses. This is where you can create canned responses right off the bat. Actually, the way you would create them would be you would type out some information here. Let's say it's blah, blah, blah. And I simply go, okay, great. Let's go ahead and save this as a new canned response. I'm going to call this blah. And next time I want to send an email, it just says blah, blah, blah. I'm going to hit canned responses, and I simply insert my blah, blah, blah email down there. And there you go. So it's nice and quick. Now you can see it copied my signature as well. If you were creating a canned response, I'd recommend starting with a blank form if you don't already have your signature. Speaking of which, if you guys are typing out your entire signatures, you can also add an automatic signature in the settings area. I think a lot of people know how to do that. So let me get back to where we were. Discard that email. Back into the presentation here. Let's go over some more tips. Now, where did we leave off? Reply by, templates, canned responses. Let's talk about tip number 15. Get your reading list out of your inbox and utilize RSS feeds and this Read It Later application called getpocket.com. Let me show you what these things are. RSS feeds, first of all, a lot of people will use their email as a way to get articles that they're interested in. So you may have subscribed at some point to a newsletter where there's really important information that you'd like to read. Now, the problem is your reading list in your inbox creates a problem because when you get one of these newsletters, you start reading. And sometimes reading will take a long period of time, especially if you're not a speed reader, which, by the way, if I could shamelessly promote, go to irisreading.com today if you're not a speed reader. But what I want to get across here is that you shouldn't have your reading list in your inbox because there are better ways to handle a reading list. You can use RSS feeds, or you can use an application called Read It Later. It's actually at getpocket.com. Let me show you really quickly how these work, and that way you can get a sense of how to use them yourself. So if you have a, let's see here. We've all probably seen these RSS. Probably seen the RSS image like this. Next time you see that, I want you to click on it, and that's how you can save something to an RSS reader. So you can go to something like Google Reader, and if the Google Reader is at google.com/reader. Some of you might be familiar with this, and let me sign into my actual Google Reader so you guys can see. This is the way you can keep track of your emails now. Not emails, your reading list. So let's say you have a site. You can see mine over here. I have it sorted into folders. So I actually have an education folder where I try to keep track of a variety of websites that I'm interested in that all deal with education. These are different news sites, blogs. You can see the New York Times education section is here, NPR, a blog called Gotham Schools. All of these, and if I want to do some reading here, I'm not going to subscribe to their email newsletter. I just go to my Google Reader, I click on education, and there you go. There's all my articles right here. I'm usually just glancing at the headlines. If I want to read one, I get it right here. But I do not want to be getting emails from all of these different sites. And the cool thing about RSS is they tell you when the latest article came. So you can see right here, 1:53 p.m. That was the latest one. All right. I've got other folders here. You can see I have one. Let's see here. You can actually do this on. I've got one for technology. So technology subscribes to blogs and news sites like TechCrunch.com or Mashable. And if I want to keep track of my technology news, I just click right there, and I've got it all in one spot. And this is way better than trying to put that reading list in my inbox. Now, let's say you do have it in your inbox, or you've got it in here, and you don't have time to read this article. You don't have time to read this article or the one after it because you are actually doing a webinar right now, and nobody wants to watch you speed read these articles. So what you can do is use this application called it's a Read It Later application. Well, it helps you read things later. It used to be called Read It Later. Now it's called Pocket. What Pocket does, it allows you to save things for later. Works on an iPhone, on an iPad, on an Android device, on the web as well. Works pretty much anywhere where you have an internet connection. It allows you to save articles to read later. So let me show you. Let's say I want to read these articles later. I don't have time now because I'm doing a webinar. I just click this little button right here, which is an extension on the Google Chrome browser that I'm using. But this application works on all the major browsers: Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer. I'm using Google Chrome. I just click this right here, and you'll notice that it's going to save the page. Now that page was saved to my Pocket account. Now I do the same thing on the other one. I could just simply, okay, save this for later. All right, now when I want to get my articles back, I could simply go to that website, getpocket.com, or maybe I use the iPad app that they have. I log in, and it'll show me all the articles that I wanted to read later. And now I can simply click on that article, I can read through it. When I'm done, I can archive it, or I can delete it, or I can favorite it. I'm going to archive this one. And then I just keep all my reading in one spot. Okay, why does exercise make us feel good? Let's say I want to read that one. I can get through this article, and when I'm done, again, I'm just archiving. This is a good way, and actually I would recommend this too. If you don't want to use an RSS reader like Google Reader, which I would highly recommend, if you have email newsletters that are in your inbox and they're linking to articles on the internet, save them with your Pocket application, because that'll allow you to get to them later. Now, by the way, I know Pocket is not the only application that does this. I think there's another one called Instapaper that's pretty popular. Some of you may have heard of it. Instapaper is also a great application. I'm just more familiar with this one right here because I've been using it for like a couple of years. It was formerly known as Read It Later. Great application, and best of all, this is free. So is Google Reader. Take advantage of these things. So let's see what else we can get done. I'm looking here back to the presentation. Back up. What's our next email tip? Oh, using folders and labels to categorize things. Now, I've got on the screen there, it says action versus reference. I think of all of my emails as either actionable or reference emails. Or they're getting archived and deleted. But for emails that are somewhat important, they fall into two main categories for me. Action, do I need to reply to this? Or reference. So let me give you a quick idea of how I do this. I actually have, let me see here, show you. I actually have in my Gmail, you'll notice over here on the side, I want you to take a look on this side right over here. This is where I keep track of, okay, is it a fast action or is it a longer action? So what I try to do is any kind of emails that take, let's say if it's 1 minute, I just get rid of it right away. But I put this little fast action label, which says fast action less than 5 minutes. I put it there because any emails that I want to get to later on that I don't have time for, but that are quick emails, I'm going to put them there. Now, anything else that takes a little longer, what I do is I put it in one of these reply by folders. So these are all action-related folders. Now, remember, I said all these folders right here, these have to be cleared out on the day. So today is Monday. I better not, at the end of the day when I'm done working, I better not have anything in my Monday folder. Now, right now, I don't have anything in my Monday folder, but I have a bunch of stuff in my inbox. I'm going to clear that out in a moment. But all of these emails here are either going to get archived or they're going to go into fast action folder, which is basically means this requires less than 5 minutes, or they're going to go into a reply by folder, or if they're a reference that I need to check later on that I need quick access to, I'm going to put them in the reference folder. Now, realistically, you could also just archive it and reference it by searching for the term, but the reference label right here for me is something that I need to refer to quickly, and maybe I'm not going to be able to remember a keyword from it. I just need to click on it. So I'll show you how that works in a little bit. Let's go on to our next tip here. Using filters. Filters are tools that automatically sort through your email. So one example, if you're using, I know you can do filters in most major internet email programs. Outlook, I used to be more familiar with it. I haven't really used Outlook much over the last couple of years, but you can use, in Gmail, you've got these filters. You can say, okay, if the subject line is this, label it as this. Or if the subject line is this, archive it. Or if it has the words blah, 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 archive it. Or if it's from this, do this to it. Email filters are a great way to kind of organize your email quickly. So definitely take it.
And you know what one of the greatest filters is for newsletters is you can filter for the word unsubscribe, and you can filter out you can include in the filter the word unsubscribe and exclude the word RE when you're replying to someone, or FW, which is forward. So it will eliminate the possibility if someone is forwarding you an email, a newsletter, or you're replying to an email with a newsletter. You can filter out those emails and you can put them in the folder that's called optional. And in the optional folder, you will have all your newsletters. And if you and so your inbox will will actually get closer to zero quite quickly. And if you do need some entertainment, if you do need to look in your newsletters, just look into folder optional. It's all there. Like, this is what I use. This is my personal thing.
If you've got some spare time for a diversion, then absolutely. I like the idea of having an optional folder. That means that, hey, you've got a little bit of time. That's a great idea.
Optional.
So definitely use your filters. This is a great way to sort your email, keep it organized, and in a very automated fashion. Let's talk about tip number 18. This is the 1-minute rule. The 1-minute rule says if I've got an email that needs to be replied to and it can take less than a minute, I'm not just going to check it and say, I'll get to that later because I got to read all my, some people will read all their emails first and then try to respond to them maybe in order or delete them in order. Use the 1-minute rule. If you just opened up an email and you read it and you can reply to it in less than 1 minute, that's got to get taken care of right away. So that's our tip number 18. Tip number 19 is get less email by unsubscribing. So we've been talking about email management, but it would be nice if we only got a handful of emails every day, just a few that were extremely important. And all the other stuff, opting out of it. This is, I actually recommend if you get swamped by email, and most of your email is stuff that kind of reference or notification related. Some are things that you subscribe to that you used to be interested in, now you're not so interested in. Spend a moment in a day and just focus on relentlessly unsubscribing from emails. And when I say relentlessly, I mean being extremely strict and saying, okay, do I really need to keep getting this email? Do I need to be subscribed to this newsletter, or can I subscribe to their RSS feed instead? And just keep track of my reading list separate from my email. So keep that in mind. You will, if you get less email, there's less to worry about, and it's less time on your end. So I really highly recommend you take a part of a day, and by part of a day, this might only take you 15 minutes, and just relentlessly unsubscribe from things that are just not necessary. Tip number 20, set an email day. Here's what I mean by this. An email day is, there are two kinds. One is an organized email day. So let's say right now, those of you that are in the webinar, maybe you've got an inbox that is just out of control and it needs to be tamed. You need to set a day or a strong part of the day just organizing email and applying some of these principles that we talked about. Now, alternatively, I would also recommend that you set an email day where you completely ignore your email for an entire day. I know for some of us that have kind of gotten addicted to email, this can be very hard to do. And I want you to think of it as a challenge. Actually, try this challenge, this coming weekend maybe. Maybe you can't do it realistically while you're at work, but maybe on Saturday, if you got used to checking your email, maybe your work email on weekends when you're not supposed to be working, or maybe you work 7 days a week. Nothing's wrong with that. I work 7 days a week, but you could take time off to say, you know what, I'm just not going to check my email today. This is a great way to maybe either get other things done, spend time with friends, family, or just have some personal relaxed time. I think you'll find this useful if you start setting aside one day. It's very useful to have. A lot of people will take off on Sundays where they have religious obligations on either Sunday or Saturday or whatever day it is. It's a good day to have one day set aside for rest. So keep that in mind with your productivity and also keep you, I think, sane. And by the way, when I said I work 7 days a week, it's not every single week that I work 7 days a week. I've had plenty of days where I do that. And I absolutely love the work that I do, so it's not a problem for me. But if you're in a job, let's say you're looking for a new job, you're not too crazy about the work that you do, I would highly recommend on weekends, don't even bother. Have that one day where you could just ignore it. And by the way, there are some innovative companies out there that started instituting a policy on Fridays. I've heard about this with several companies in the Chicago area. On Fridays, it's no email day. And anybody that's got to communicate with anyone in the office, you got to walk up to them and talk to them. There's no email being replied to or exchanged. And some places will just have a department do this. Obviously, this might not work in like a customer service department, but you guys get the idea. Now, tip number 21 is use a service like FollowUp.cc to remind yourself of future deadlines. Remember earlier I showed you my inbox and it showed things like reply to by Monday, reply to by Tuesday, by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What if I got a reply in 2 weeks? Well, then that system falls apart, right? Well, we've got another service that you can use. It's called FollowUp.cc. Basically, what you're able to do with this program is you sign up for it. It's free. You have your email. And let's say somebody sent me an email and I just got to remind myself to get back in touch with this person in 2 weeks. What I'll do is I'll forward my email to, let's say it's 2 weeks. I'll forward it to 2 weeks at followup.cc. What will happen is I send it to the service that I previously signed up for. In 2 weeks, I'll get an email from followup.cc. It'll show me the copy of the email I sent them, and it'll say, hey, you wanted to be reminded of this? Here it is. And I can even add some notes to that too, because I can forward, when I forward this to followup.cc, I can add a few details. Follow up with this person about blah, blah, blah. And then when you get that email back, you can either forward it back or there's a little snooze area if you need to snooze on it. But followup.cc is great because it actually works very well with like natural language. What I mean by that is, let's say you've got to follow up on this in 2 hours, but you want to get it out of your inbox. You can simply type 2 hours at followup.cc, forward it to that address, and it'll do it. Or you can go 6 p.m. followup.cc, or you can put a date. You can put, January 22nd, 2 p.m., and it'll understand these things. And actually, if you go to the website, there's a whole FAQ section where they'll show you how to format these things. And there's a variety of ways you can format them, so you don't need to memorize certain things. It's a very, very intuitive service. I'd highly recommend it if you've got emails that you need to follow up on later on. And some people will do this in their calendar. Like I use a Google Calendar, and some people will put their reminders in there. That's fine too, but what if you don't check your calendar every single day? You check your email every day. So that might be a good way to get reminders, and this kind of a service is really, really useful. Now, tip number 22 is to learn some keyboard shortcuts. A lot of email programs have keyboard shortcuts that allow you to do certain repetitive tasks very, very easily just by pressing something on the keyboard. Gmail has this functionality. Outlook has it as well. Find out what those keyboard shortcuts are. If you're not sure how to use the keyboard shortcuts, try doing a quick Google search for your email program. Maybe keyboard shortcuts for Outlook or keyboard shortcuts for Gmail. You'll find it, and I'll actually show you in a moment. Let's actually do a live demonstration. So this is going to be a live demonstration of my inbox management ninja skills. So what I want to show you is I'm only slightly nervous about this because I've got emails in my inbox that I've let accrue during the entire day. Normally I'll check my email in the morning. I'll check to see, okay, not first thing in the morning. I'll check maybe 10 or 11 o'clock. What do I have? After I finish like a big project. Today I let the emails just run and come to me. And the reason why I did this, I wanted to show you how quickly, if you implement I'm going to implement a number of these tips actually while I'm checking my email. And I'm going to try to do this quickly and kind of explain to you what I'm doing as I'm going along. You're going to see me doing this, keyboard shortcuts. You might see me do this with the followup.cc. You might see me unsubscribe to something. You might see me use the 1 minute rule. If something's really quick, I'm just going to email the person back. The filters are already in place. You'll see me dragging things into my action folders or my reference folders. Now, I've already got my emails in any newsletters I used to have. I already have those in RSS feeds, my Read It Later app. Let me show you guys how I'm going to go over to my email inbox. So here's what we have. Okay, 20 emails. Now 20 emails by, it's almost 3 o'clock Central Time here. Now, some of you might be like, that's nothing. I get way more emails than that. Okay, well then good for you. I'd rather not have more than 20 emails. And this to me is just too much, and I don't like having it here. So let's, remember we said we're going to focus at the task at hand. I'm kind of not focusing on the task at hand because I'm trying to answer my emails and do a webinar at the same time. So I don't like to multitask usually, but I'm going to try it out right here. I'm going to start off with one of the rules we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. Get rid of the easiest ones first. So for me, that means any kind of emails that are email notifications or just reference emails. So I'm going to be using some keyboard shortcuts, and you're going to see without my mouse moving, you're going to see me just getting rid of the things that I know I can get rid of quickly. So just got a couple, check them off, this can go, this can go, this can go. That, I'll do that later. And let me just kind of go through here. What else do we got? That can go, that can go. These are all notification emails. Now, I'm not, there's no reason to reply to any of these. All right, see what I just did? In less than 30 seconds, I got rid of those. Now, I'm going to go here and I'm going to check out some of these emails. So, email from someone I know. I'm going to go ahead and put that email in the label for fast action. I can reply to this in less than 1 minute. All right, what else here? This right here. Get it? This is later. Okay, this is just a reference thing. And let's see here. This right here, I actually want to put this in. I want to do this by Tuesday. So, all right, we're officially at inbox 0. I don't know how long it took me, but I don't think it was much more than a minute or 2. Now, that's 20 emails. I didn't do many replies. I understand if there were replies that needed to happen, you might do them really quickly. Well, I did have one email that I wanted to reply to, but I know it was going to take maybe, like 3-4 minutes. I would have to read the person's email, get back to them. It's not going to take more than 5 minutes, so I put that email in my fast action less than 5 minutes later. You'll see there's a number of things right here. These I'm going to work on getting to very quickly, but they're not time sensitive. If they were time sensitive, these emails would be going in one of these folders, like a Monday folder or a Tuesday folder. Guess what's going to happen on Tuesday? I'm going to check this. Tomorrow, I'm going to check this folder. I'm going to make sure it gets down to 0. Wednesday folder. Got a couple things on Wednesday. Thursday folder. Friday folder. Nothing. Saturday folder. Sunday. So you can see how this process works. And this is how you can kind of fly through an inbox. So there's a number of things I want you guys to get out of this. First of all, I want you to, the reason I wanted to show you my inbox and how I get through this is so that you can actually see that I'm trying to practice what I preach. Now, I'm not always perfect about it. I've had days where I got to check myself and say, hey, you're spending way too much time in your inbox. Time to work on that project you've been trying to get done. But I'm always trying to keep myself in check. I understand, I'm not perfect. I'm sharing the reason why I want to share these ideas with you guys. A lot of people that come to our classes, we get a lot of people that ask about this. They say, we have them sometimes, what's the biggest productivity challenge that you have? And they'll say, it's my inbox. My email is just killing me. Or sometimes we'll ask people, what kind of reading do you do? And someone will say they spend a ton of time just reading emails and getting back to them. And they're just spending all this time. I hope these ideas, some of the tips and ideas that we've talked about here in this webinar, I hope you found them somewhat interesting and that you can put them into play. That's the main thing that I want you to do. Start putting these tips and ideas, the things that you found in here, put them in play. And actually, one of the simplest things, for those of you that have a lot of emails, remember that idea we talked about with putting things on a back burner? That is something that you can do today. If you've got over 100 emails or 200 emails that you haven't responded to or just kind of being built up in your inbox, create that back burner folder, dump it all in there. Maybe you want to keep the ones from today that you still have to respond to. And tomorrow is a fresh new day. And you can start off with an inbox that's 0, and you won't get sucked into your inbox. You won't become one of these people that gets addicted to email or becomes an email zombie. So I want you to practice these techniques and these tips that we talked about today. And if you want to get in touch with me, if you have suggestions of your own, maybe there are inbox techniques that you use, I'd love to hear them. I'm still, for me, I feel like a lifelong learner. I want to learn as much as I can and continuously. So if you have tips, feel free to share them with me. Maybe you know some programs or applications that are useful, or email. If you want to connect with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. If you're going to connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn, just let me know that you came to one of these webinars so I can, accept you as a friend. Otherwise, usually I try to make sure that I'm not just friending anybody on these services. Everybody does that. Want to filter it out, and I want to make sure that you guys are kept up to date on these future webinars. We're going to be doing more this week. I'll send you guys, actually Katya will put the link in the chat box in a moment. And actually, when the webinar's over, it'll forward you over to the list of other webinars we're doing. And by the way, we'll keep you posted on future webinars. Aside from this series of 10 that we've been doing this past week, we're going to be doing another series very soon. We'll keep you posted on that. I think you'll find it very interesting. My contact information is on the screen. Katya, who's been in the background, just kind of answering questions, kind of our moderator for the day, her contact information is on there too. And also keep in mind, we actually do corporate workshops and workshops at schools. If you want to invite us to your company, we'd love to do an email management session, whether that's a quick 1-hour workshop or a 2-hour thing or a longer training session. We've done this for employees of Google. We've done this for employees at Barclays, HSBC, a number of other companies. So feel free to get in touch with one of us. I'd love to sign that up. But I want to thank you all for attending the webinar. Thank you all so much. We'll hope to hear from you soon, and enjoy the rest of your week.